The words hit me like a slap. You and your kid are just freeloaders. My father's voice thundered across the living room. I froze mid-step, the grocery bag still in my hands. My mother stood behind him, arms crossed, her face sharp with disgust. I swallowed hard. Freeloaders? In my house? This is my place, I said quietly, my voice trembling but steady enough. Dad scoffed. Your place? Don't act like you earned anything. We've been carrying you your whole life. I set the bags down slowly, each thud echoing in the tense silence. My son peeked out from the hallway, wide-eyed, clutching his toy car. I wanted to shield him, to hide him from this ugliness. Carrying me? I whispered, almost laughing at the absurdity. Who's been paying the mortgage? Who bought the furniture you're sitting on? Mom stepped forward, pointing at me like I was a stranger. Watch your tone. You wouldn't survive without us. I felt my chest tighten. I wanted to scream, to throw every receipt in their faces. But my son's eyes were still on me. Go to your room, sweetie, I said softly. He hesitated, but then disappeared behind the door. Only then did I let the fire rise in me. You're calling me a freeloader while living in my house? My words cracked, half fury, half disbelief. Dad slammed his fist on the table. Don't twist this, Amanda. We've given you life, food, everything, and now you repay us by acting like you're better? I clenched my fists. Better? No. Just tired of being treated like dirt. Claire's name slipped out of Mom's mouth like poison. Your sister would never talk to us this way. She respects us, I laughed bitterly. Claire never lifted a finger. But she's the golden child, right? I'm the one paying the bills while she sits on her throne. Dad's face reddened. You ungrateful brat. Without us, you'd be nothing. Without me, you'd be out on the street. I shot back before I could stop myself. The silence that followed was heavy, suffocating. Mom's lip curled. If you hate it here so much, then leave. The words echoed through the room, cold and final. Leave? I repeated. Dad leaned forward, his voice sharp as a knife. You have 48 hours. Pack your things. You and that boy of yours, gone. Claire owns this house now. The floor seemed to vanish beneath me. My breath caught in my throat. What did you just say? My voice cracked, barely above a whisper. Dad's eyes didn't flinch. Claire owns this house now. We signed it over. She deserves it more than you. I felt my knees weaken. Every late night, every dollar I'd poured into this place, every sacrifice I'd made, it all shattered in one cruel sentence. Mom smirked as if enjoying my collapse. You heard him. You and your child don't belong here anymore. I wanted to scream, to beg, to fight. But instead, I stood frozen, my pulse pounding in my ears. My throat burned with words I couldn't speak. Claire owns this house? I muttered, my voice distant even to me. Dad folded his arms. Don't make this harder than it needs to be. Pack. Leave. I stared at them, at the people who had raised me, who were now tearing the ground out from under me. My son's laugh floated faintly from his room. Innocent, unaware, I couldn't let him see me break. Without another word, I turned on my heel and walked down the hall. My hands shook as I shut my bedroom door behind me. Alone in the dark, the anger finally spilled out. I pressed my fist to my temples, my body trembling. 48 hours, my own parents, my own house. But beneath the grief, something else flickered. A spark. This wasn't the first time they'd tried to make me feel disposable, but maybe it would be the last. I remember it like it was yesterday. Childhood dinners that should have been warm turned into battlefields I never won. Look at your brother, Dad said one night, his fork pointing like a judge's gavel. Top marks again. That's my boy. Everyone clapped. Mom, Aunt Margaret, even the neighbors who'd been invited. My brother grinned, soaking in the praise like sunlight. I swallowed and spoke softly. I got a B+ on my science project. The teacher said it was one of the most creative ones. Dad didn't even glance at me. He waved a dismissive hand. B+ isn't an achievement, Amanda. Don't brag about being average. The laughter around the table burned. Aunt Margaret leaned in, smirking. She's always been the quiet one. Not much to show. I forced a smile, pushing peas around my plate. My brother laughed too, the sound sharp and cruel. Don't take it personally, he said, his voice dripping with arrogance. Not everyone can be gifted. The room erupted in more laughter, and I felt my throat tighten. My mother didn't defend me. She didn't even look at me. I excused myself quietly. May I be excused? Dad waved his hand again, already turning to brag about my brother's next soccer match. Upstairs, in my small room, I closed the door and leaned against it. My eyes stung, tears spilling fast. I pressed my hand over my mouth to muffle the sobs. Through the walls, I could still hear them celebrating him, their golden child. I was invisible, except when I was a burden. That night, something settled inside me. Not just sadness, resentment. A seed planted deep, one that would grow roots I couldn't yet imagine. By my teenage years, the unfairness had only sharpened. Dad, can I have money for new shoes? Mine are falling apart, I asked carefully one Saturday morning. He didn't look up from his newspaper. Get a job, Amanda. Learn responsibility. Minutes later, my brother strolled in, tossing his soccer cleats on the floor. Dad, I need a new pair. The latest model. Dad lowered the paper instantly. Of course, son. We'll pick them up this afternoon. The sting of it never dulled. That afternoon, while they shopped, I clocked in for my shift at the diner. I balanced plates bigger than my arms, wiped tables sticky with syrup, and pocketed tips just to buy notebooks, pens, and shampoo. One evening, Aunt Margaret stopped by. Her tongue was as sharp as always. So, Amanda, she said, swirling tea in her cup. Still bussing tables? When will you do something? Important? I forced a polite smile. I'm saving for college, she laughed, loud and cutting. College? You? You're just ordinary? Don't dream too big. The words hit like a slap. My brother smirked across the table, enjoying every second. That night, I opened a fresh notebook. I started writing, not homework, not chores, my truth. Page after page, I poured my anger, my shame, my determination into those lines. Every insult, every dismissal, every time they made me feel small, I wrote it down. It became my lifeline. When they laughed at me, the pages listened. When Aunt Margaret mocked me, the pages gave me comfort. When Dad praised my brother for the 100th time, the pages reminded me I still mattered. I didn't know it then, but those notebooks would become my quiet weapon. By adulthood, my role in the house hadn't changed. I was still the one keeping the lights on. Rent's due again, Dad muttered one morning, sliding the bill across the table. I'll cover it, I said, pulling cash from my envelope. But I'll need to cut some hours from groceries. He nodded without thanks, already calling for my brother. That evening, the whole family gathered for his birthday. The living room was packed with relatives, balloons sagging from the ceiling, and a cake big enough to feed a small army. I'd paid for half of it. My brother leaned back in his chair, smirking as the candles flickered. Speech! Someone shouted. He grinned, raising his glass. Well, what can I say? I've got the best family. Especially Amanda, our live-in maid. The words hit like a slap. The room erupted in laughter. Even my parents chuckled, as though it were the funniest joke they'd ever heard. I froze, my cheeks burning hot. That's not funny, I said quietly. He smirked wider. Lighten up. You clean, you cook, you pay. If the shoe fits. Dad slapped the table, laughing so hard his eyes watered. He's not wrong. I stared down at my plate, gripping my fork so tight my knuckles turned white. Around me, laughter filled the air, every giggle like another knife in my back. Inside, I whispered to myself, one day I won't be cleaning their mess. But no one heard. No one ever did. It didn't take long for the next blow to land. Rent's short again, Mom announced one night, folding her arms. I sighed. I've already paid utilities. I can't keep covering everything. Dad's voice cut like steel. Be grateful you even live here. Without us, where would you be? My brother leaned against the wall, smirking. Yeah, Amanda. Stop acting like you're doing us favors. You owe this family. I glanced at my child, sitting silently at the end of the table, eyes wide, confusion written all over his small face. He didn't understand the words, but he understood the cruelty. I owe you? My voice trembled with rage. I've been paying the bills for years. Covering debts, covering dinners, covering everything. And you sit there acting like I'm the problem? Dad's hand slammed the table. Watch your tone, Mom added sharply. Don't forget, this is our house. You're just temporary. The smirk on my brother's face widened, like he'd been waiting for this scene all along. I pushed back my chair, my pulse pounding in my ears. You'll regret this, I whispered, my voice low but sharp enough to slice through the silence. Then I turned and stormed out, my child scrambling after me. Clutching my hand tight, that night after putting him to bed, I sat at the kitchen table with a notebook and a box of receipts. One by one, I laid them out. Rent I'd paid, utilities in my name, grocery bills. Even repairs I'd covered. On the first page of the notebook I wrote, every insult, every payment, every time they made me feel small. The pen dug into the paper as I wrote the night's words. Be grateful you even live here. This time, I wouldn't forget. This time, I'd keep track. And one day, I'd use it. The apartment was small, barely 2 rooms with peeling paint and a leaky faucet, but it was mine. I dropped the last box onto the floor with a sigh. My child tugged at my sleeve. Mommy, is this really home now? I forced a smile. Yes, sweetheart. It's not big, but it's ours. At night, when he slept on the worn-out mattress, I stayed up with bills spread across the kitchen counter. Double shifts at the diner, late nights cleaning offices, every dollar stretched thin. One evening, after a 14-hour shift, I stood in front of the cracked mirror. My reflection looked nothing like me. Red eyes, exhausted face, clothes hanging loose. Tears welled before I could stop them. I can't keep doing this, I whispered. But then I caught my own gaze in the mirror. My lips trembled, and I forced the words out louder, sharper. I don't need them to survive. The silence that followed was heavy, but freeing. For the first time, I believed it. A knock rattled the door. It was Mrs. Lopez from next door, holding out a plate of food. Saw you moving in. Thought you and your boy could use a warm meal? I blinked back fresh tears. Thank you. Really. That night, I tucked my child in and whispered, things will get better. And as he drifted to sleep, I pulled out my laptop, searching for freelance jobs, data entry, writing, anything I could do after work. Quietly, I was planting seeds of independence, even if no one else could see it yet. It didn't take long for whispers to reach me. At the diner, one of my coworkers leaned in. Hey, Amanda, isn't your brother married to Sarah? Word is they're fighting nonstop. Money issues. I raised an eyebrow. Money issues? She nodded. Creditors. Late payments. Some folks say he's drowning in debt. I didn't react, just forced a polite smile. But inside, I felt a spark of vindication. Later, in the grocery store, Mrs. Patel, our old neighbor, stopped me. Amanda, such a shame about your brother. His wife came by crying last week. Said the bank's after them. I pretended to be surprised. Oh? I hadn't heard. But when I got home, I opened my journal and wrote every detail down. Debts, arguments, whispers of unpaid loans. That weekend, my parents called. Mom's voice was sharp. Your brother is going through a rough patch. Don't you dare gossip about it. I held the phone tight. I haven't said a word, Dad cut in. He's still the successful one. Just a little setback, I laughed bitterly under my breath. Successful? He can't even pay his bills. Watch your tone, Dad snapped. You'll never measure up to him. I ended the call before I said something I couldn't take back. That night, I sat at my tiny kitchen table, spreading receipts, bills, and now, gossip notes. Piece by piece, an arsenal was forming. Proof that their golden child wasn't golden at all. I didn't know when I'd use it, but I knew this. Their lies were cracking, and one day, I'd be the one holding the truth. The phone rang late on a Sunday. I hesitated before answering. Hi, sweetheart. Mom's voice was unusually sweet. We've been thinking, maybe it's time we all put the past behind us. Why don't you and your son come over for dinner this week? I almost laughed. Past behind us? Translation, we need something from you. Still, I forced a calm tone. Sure, Mom. Dinner sounds nice. When I walked into the old house, Claire and my brother were already at the table. Mom rushed to hug me. It's so good to see you, Amanda. Oh, right. Suddenly I'm family again. Must be a sale on fake affection. Dad pulled out a chair. Sit, sit. You work too hard. You shouldn't stress so much. I bit back a smile. This from the man who once told me I should be grateful to even live under his roof? Claire chimed in, her voice syrupy. We've missed you, sis. Things aren't the same without you. I glanced at her perfectly painted nails. Missed me or missed my bank account? Dinner was laid out. Steak, mashed potatoes, wine. I'd never seen them prepare when I lived there. Mom cleared her throat. We were wondering, Amanda, with your job going well, maybe you could help us with a few small things. There it was. I set down my fork. Small things. Dad jumped in. Just some overdue bills. Nothing major. Claire nodded like a cheerleader. Yeah, Amanda, you're the responsible one. You always help us out. I sipped my wine slowly, letting the silence drag. Inside, my thoughts snapped sharp. Responsible one? Translation, free wallet. Always help us out? Translation, we don't respect you, but we'll take your money. I finally smiled. I'll think about it. Their faces lit up as if I'd already agreed. But deep down, I knew one thing. This was their forgiveness act. And I wasn't fooled for a second. A week later, gossip reached me again. At work, Mrs. Patel leaned over the counter. "Amanda, your brother, creditors came by his house. He owes thousands. They say the bank's after him." I kept my expression neutral. "Really? That's surprising." But inside, I felt a bitter sense of justice. That evening, Mom called in a panic. "Amanda, you don't understand. Your brother's just under pressure. He's still the successful one." I clenched the phone tighter. "Successful? He can't pay his debts." Her voice cracked. "He'll bounce back." "He always does." Dad grabbed the line. "We just need you to help cover a few payments, Amanda. Just until things settle." I almost laughed out loud. "You want me to pay for his mess now?" Claire's voice rang in the background. "Don't be selfish, Amanda. He's family." I snapped. "Family? You called me a freeloader in my own house. You threw my sacrifices in my face. And now, when your golden boy is drowning, you come crawling to me?" Silence. The kind that makes the air heavy. Mom finally whispered, "Amanda, please. You've always been the strong one." I let the words hang. For years, those same lips told me I wasn't enough. Now, suddenly, I was the strong one. I drew a breath, steady and firm. "No, I'm done being your safety net." Dad's voice rose, angry. "You'll regret this, Amanda." I pressed end on the call before he could say more. That night, I spread out my journal, my receipts, my collected gossip. Page after page of proof. My brother wasn't successful. My parents weren't saints. And I wasn't their fool anymore. For the first time, I knew. My silence had ended. The anniversary dinner was buzzing with laughter, clinking glasses, and the scent of roasted chicken. I stood near the back, half invisible as always. My brother paraded around like a celebrity, shaking hands, cracking jokes. My parents trailed behind him, proud smiles plastered on their faces. Then the room shifted. Mr. Reynolds, our longtime neighbor and CEO of a local firm, raised his glass. "Before we toast, I want to say something." His voice cut through the chatter. Everyone turned to him. "I've watched this family for decades," he began. His eyes swept the room before settling on me. "And I want to acknowledge Amanda." The air froze. My brother laughed nervously. Mr. Reynolds, I think you meant me. I'm the one who's been—" Mr. Reynolds shook his head firmly. "No, I meant Amanda. She's the one who's shown responsibility. When others wasted chances, she built stability. When others relied on handouts, she stood on her own." Gasps rippled. Forks clinked against plates. I felt my cheeks warm as eyes darted toward me. Claire, my brother, choked. "That's ridiculous. Everyone knows I'm the successful one." Mr. Reynolds didn't blink. "Successful? Amanda's the one I trust. If I had to put my company in anyone's hands here, it would be hers." The words hit like thunder. My parents' smiles dropped. My brother's face drained, then twisted red. He slammed his glass down, wine spilling. "You don't know what you're talking about." Mr. Reynolds stayed calm. "I know what I've seen. Amanda carries herself with strength. She doesn't need recognition to prove her worth." Murmurs spread across the room. Cousins whispered. Neighbors exchanged raised brows. The golden boy's crown was slipping. My mother tried to interject, her voice shaky. "Mr. Reynolds, you're mistaken. Our son—" But he cut her off gently. "No mistake. Respect belongs where it's earned." All eyes landed back on me. For years, I had been invisible. Tonight, for the first time, they couldn't look past me. I didn't say much. Just met my brother's furious gaze, then whispered to myself so only I could hear, "This is just the beginning." The moment dinner ended, chaos erupted. "You humiliated me," my brother shouted, jabbing a finger at me. "You've been manipulating everyone." I kept my voice calm. I didn't say a word tonight. "That was all, Mr. Reynolds." Dad jumped in, his voice trembling with rage. "Stop pretending, Amanda. You've always wanted to tear this family apart." Mom's hand shook as she tried to hush him. "Don't do this here." But the crowd was already circling closer, sensing the storm. My brother's voice cracked. "She's a fraud. You think she's some saint? She's nothing without us." I took a deep breath, reached into my bag, and laid papers on the table one by one. "This is the deed to the house," I said clearly. "Signed in my name, not his." Gasps echoed again. I held up another folder. Receipts. Years of bills I covered while you all laughed at me. "Food, rent, repairs." Cousin Lily stepped forward, arms crossed. Her voice rang sharp. "She's telling the truth. I've seen it. You've bled her dry while treating her like garbage." The room shifted. Whispers turned into nods. My brother lunged for the papers, but I pulled them back. You want proof? Here it is. Every insult, every debt, every lie. His face twisted. You think this makes you better than me? I didn't flinch. No, it just makes me free. The silence that followed was deafening. My parents shrank back, their pride unraveling in front of everyone, and for the first time in my life, the power in the room belonged to me. The dining hall felt colder once the shouting stopped. Plates still sat half-eaten, glasses tipped over, but no one dared move. My brother shoved back his chair, face red, fists shaking. This isn't over, he spat before storming toward the door. The slam echoed like a gunshot. Relatives traded glances. My aunt clutched her pearls. A neighbor whispered, I had no idea. Dad slumped into his seat, staring at the tablecloth like it had betrayed him too. How could you? His voice cracked, more from shame than anger. I looked him straight in the eye. How could you? Mom reached for her glass, but her hands shook so hard the water spilled. She tried to gather herself. We were only protecting the family, I laughed softly. No, you were protecting his pride. At the cost of mine. The whispers around us grew louder. A cousin muttered, She's right. Another said, We saw it for years. Dad barked, Enough! But even his voice didn't carry the same weight anymore. For years, they had been the authority. Tonight, they were just two parents stripped bare in front of everyone. Mom whispered, Amanda, please don't do this. I leaned forward, calm now. I didn't do this. You did. The silence that followed was brutal. Guests started standing, murmuring excuses as they drifted toward the door. Nobody wanted to be on their side anymore. Cousin Lily gave me a small nod before leaving. That nod said more than any speech. Validation, acknowledgement, belief. When the last guest shuffled out, the room felt hollow. Just me, my parents, and their shame? Dad pressed his palms to his forehead. We've lost everything. I stood, gathering my documents. No, you only lost the lies. I lost everything a long time ago. Walking out into the night, I finally realized invisibility had been my prison. Now strength was my freedom. The night air hit like a release, crisp and cool. I stepped onto the street where the echoes of laughter and whispers still lingered in the dark. Daniel was waiting by his car, leaning against the door, arms crossed. When he saw me, he straightened. You okay? I exhaled. Better than I thought I'd be. He opened the passenger door. Let's get you out of here. As we drove, silence stretched, but it wasn't heavy. It was peaceful. Finally, Daniel said, You know, I've watched you carry them for years. Tonight, you finally dropped the weight. I stared out the window, city lights flickering past. I thought it would break me to let go, but it didn't. It feels lighter. He glanced at me. That's because it was never yours to carry. I smiled faintly. For the first time, those words felt real. We pulled up to my apartment. Daniel turned off the engine but didn't move. What you did tonight took guts most people never find. I shook my head. It wasn't guts. It was survival. He looked at me steadily. No, it was justice. Something inside me clicked. I whispered, Justice doesn't always come in courts. It comes true. The line hung between us, quiet but powerful. Daniel grinned. That's the strongest thing I've ever heard you say. We sat there for a moment, both of us letting the silence settle. Inside, I put down the folders, the papers, and the proof of my life's burden. I didn't need them anymore. Daniel lingered in the doorway. So, what now? I looked around my small but peaceful apartment. Now, I will start living for myself. For years, I had been a shadow in my own story. Tonight, I finally stepped into the light, and for the first time in forever, I felt free. The next morning, sunlight poured through the thin curtains of my apartment. It wasn't grand, it wasn't glamorous, but it was mine. And for the first time in years, the silence inside didn't feel like loneliness. It felt like peace. I sat at the small kitchen table with a cup of coffee, steam curling upward, watching the city wake outside. My phone buzzed endlessly with messages I didn't open. Apologies, excuses, attempts from relatives to soften the fallout. I let it ring. Last night had made one truth clear. I no longer needed to answer to anyone. I thought about the years I had begged for scraps of love, worked myself raw to prove I was worthy, only to be laughed at, dismissed, used. Every scar they left on me had hardened into something stronger. Daniel knocked on the door and stepped in with a bag of pastries. You didn't eat last night, he said softly, placing them on the counter. I smiled. You always show up at the right time, he shrugged. That's what real family does. His words lingered. Real family. I looked at him, steady, loyal, present when no one else had been, and I realized blood might tie you together, but truth decides who stays. Later, I walked through the park, journal in hand. Kids laughed in the distance, parents cheered from benches, the world spinning on without knowing my story. I opened to a blank page and wrote, "Family isn't always the people who share your name. It's the people who share your truth." Tears blurred the ink, but they weren't the same tears I used to hide. These were lighter, freeing. A memory surfaced. My father waving off my grades, my brother mocking me at his party, my mother siding with them every time. For so long I had believed their voices. I had believed I wasn't enough, but last night I rewrote everything. The nods from cousins, the gasps in the hall, the whispers of truth that finally broke through years of lies. They weren't validation I needed, but confirmation of what I had always known deep down. I was never the weak one. Daniel's voice echoed in my mind. It was never yours to carry. He was right. I closed the journal and stood, watching the sun dip low, painting the sky with fire. My life wasn't over. It was just beginning. And this time, the story was mine to write. I whispered the words that had burned inside me for years, words I never thought I'd have the strength to say out loud. They once told me I wasn't enough. Today, I am more than they'll ever be. And with that, I walked forward, free at last.